Hey everybody, and welcome to Let's Look at Montague's Mount. Montague's Mount is a game that has just come out. It is a horror slash suspense slash adventure title that so far in the probably 2 hours that I've spent with it so far has been very puzzle-centric, and 2 hours into the game has not really taken me that far because the puzzles that I've encountered right off the bat have been exceptionally difficult. This is available on GOG. I will put a link in the video description below, as well as Get Games, which is a distribution service I'm not very familiar with, but it's also supposed to be a little bit of a spooky game, so I figured it would fit for October. Even though, to, bury the lead here a little bit, or to spoil things right off the bat, I have not been really scared that much at all. If the same sense, if you compare this to something like Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs, which is kind of like a narrative-driven horror game, that unsettled me from the get-go, I very much find myself just kind of solving these puzzles right off the bat here. So as you can see, I've completed the prologue here, and you might be saying, like, Northernlion, you gotta do your due diligence, man. You can't do an impressions video on a game when you've only played through the prologue. This literally took me 2 hours, and I'm going to explain why, because the first puzzle that we will encounter here, it's multi-step, and it is goddamn intimidating, and required me to use some resources that I would otherwise consider myself to be unavailable to use, or incapable of using, but I made it work. And you can see how far I am through Montague's Mount here. I don't know, maybe that represents 30%? That kind of seems in line with the amount of kind of secrets that I've unlocked as well, and I'll explain it as we get going. So, I'm going to start from Prologue 1 here, because I think on Prologue 0 we're going to get, like, cutscenes and some story, and I don't necessarily want that. I would much rather just kind of start off here. And this is actually perfect. So, normally you start and you've kind of, like, shipwrecked yourself, or you've ended up shipwrecked on this beach, and you don't have a walking stick, so you spend some time walking around and trying to figure out, like, where you can get something that will support your weight as you move throughout this beach-like environment, and then there's just a stick over here. Otherwise, you walk, like, really slanted and slow, and it almost made me throw up because I'm very prone to motion sickness, but that's not necessarily the game's fault. So far, 2013 has seemed like the year of let's disorient the player. Like, I was playing Saints Row the 4th, and then I got injected with some kind of drug, and now everything's trippy. Montague's Mount, I'm sliding all over the place. Let me check my inventory here for a second. Yep, okay, I do have a spinner then. Which is something we're going to need for a puzzle a little bit later. Grand Theft Auto 5, I don't want to spoil anything necessarily, but there's a scene where you kind of get drugged and then everything's funky, and I'm like, game, just let me play your game. I don't want to throw up all over everybody. So, pretty simple controls here. It is just WASD to move around. There is no, like, shift function. Unlike Amnesia, there's no lantern or anything like that. It's a very kind of simple game, at least from an inventory management standpoint from what I've seen so far. And structure-wise, it very much feels more like a point-and-click adventure where, you have an inventory, which I'll bring up here with I, and then you'll have items in your inventory, and you just kind of try those with objects that you find in the environment in order to solve the puzzles. So there are these notes. And this one is just telling us what we can do in order to explore the environment. So there's a few different ways we can interact with things. If something has an I, then we can right-click and get some information, and it'll tell us, like, its Irish or Gaelic name, and then the translation as well. If something has a hand, we can click on it with our left mouse button, and it'll actually pop it open. And then we can push open the gate. And if something has, like, anything else, I don't think it really does anything for us. So this is set on, or in rural Ireland, I guess. I guess they were shipwrecked somewhere around there. And, this is meant to be, I guess, kind of contrasting the typical stereotype of the island as, being green rolling hills and everyone's friendly. Instead, this is very much, it's kind of sinister, but it's also cool in its kind of rustic design, if that makes sense. One thing I want to talk about right off the bat here, two major complaints I have with this game. I might as well just talk about this one right off the bat, too. This is slow. This is a game where you never move quickly, and that's fine. It makes things atmospheric and contemplative, but it also kind of makes things boring a lot of the time, and I oftentimes found myself, like, walking for... It seems like you're walking forever, and then you look back, and you're like, I've walked for, like, 30 seconds, and I've only moved, like, 10 meters, maybe. And also, another thing that kind of really, puts a stick in the spokes of the momentum in this game is that you can't actually examine things while you're moving. And beyond that, you can't actually see what you can examine while you're moving. Like, it completely takes the mouse pointer off of your screen, which is fine from an immersion standpoint, but also sometimes you're like, the objects that you can interact with are not necessarily always lit up like these notes are. So, you see something and you're like, I'm not sure if I can interact with this. You actually have to stop and then, stand still and then pan your mouse around, which really slows it down. Also, graphically, I don't think the game necessarily looks bad. Everything's a little bit fuzzy and washed out, but I think that's by design. But occasionally, it also gets like really dark and dim and black and white, and it just, yeah, I mean, I realize again, this is meant to be a game that's kind of, you know, in the horror aspect, and it makes things kind of atmospheric, I guess, but it also makes it really hard to see sometimes, which can be very, very frustrating. But anyway, I'll read this note because this sets up kind of the first puzzle that we have here. The electricity seems to be currently turned off. Explore further along the path, and you may find the source of the power. So this will show me where the light switch is, and I can come in here and click it, and of course it doesn't work because there's not any electricity. But this is basically step one to what is a much larger puzzle, and potentially hilarious puzzle, depending on your perspective. When I saw the instructions for this puzzle, because they are explicitly written down at some point in the game, I was like, are you serious? I don't know if I really have it in me to go through all this. So we are going to go to all of these rooms, or all of these shacks, but first things first, we do have to turn the electricity on just so we can see a little bit better. So this is a very important piece for us to pick up here. Occasionally we do get that weird little squinty thing. So here we have picked up a sundial caster gnomon. I don't really know what that means. I'm gonna, you know, don't watch this if you don't want anything about this to be spoiled, but I'm gonna explain how to solve all the puzzles here in the prologue, which again may represent as much as 30% of the game so far. And I say that because occasionally you'll come across like these collectibles. This is what I mean by it getting very dim, by the way. But you'll come across these collectibles, and when you do, it's like X of 22 found, and I found like 7 of 22 in this opening section, or 6 of 22, so it's like, you know, maybe a third of the way through the game, the entire prologue is. Now, you know, there's this weird little demonic child. This is probably the worst criticism I could level at a horror game, and, you know, it is worth noting that I am still only just past the prologue, so I don't know if it eventually gets substantially more horrifying than this, but I found the scares as much goofy, or the atmosphere, I guess I should say, as much goofy as I did terrifying, and that is not necessarily heady praise for a horror game. So, again, incredibly disoriented here. I think we're just supposed to walk straight ahead, and then I can't remember if there's a jump scare here. Certainly, I mean, it's kind of the easy way out to include, like, laughing 19th century children in order to imbue a kind of atmosphere of terror. But still, I get it. Now, we need some gasoline, and I can't remember where that comes from. There's also a sundial over here. And this is what I mean when I say that, you know, things occasionally get very dim and it's hard to see. Like, you're probably noticing that as you're watching this right now. But this is actually a very good example of what my typical experience with Montague's Mount has been so far. Walk over to something. This looks interesting. I seem to be missing an object. Okay, that's fine. Now we'll go and we'll kind of tediously walk back through the areas that we've seen so far to try to find the object. Now, it should be substantially easier for me now, because I understand what object I'm looking for. I'm looking for a gas canister that I can use to fill the generator. But most of the time, it's really frustrating because you click on something, and in a lot of like point-and-click adventure games, they'll give you some kind of contextual clue. They'll be like, I need some kind of fuel to get this going, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm an idiot, but thanks for helping me help you, game. Whereas in Montague's Mount, it just says, I seem to be missing an object. This is not what we need, but we'll need it later. And, you know, I seem to be missing an object is just not descriptive enough. Now, again, luckily, I know what I'm looking for, so it should be easier to find it, but it's really annoying, quite frankly, that the game consistently defaults to this weird little black and white palette when, if you looked at the screenshots in the prologue, like, you can go back to, like, the 1.5 minute mark of this video, they're all in, like, rich color, and I'm not saying this needs to look, you know, like Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed or something like that, but it's more than just... I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be over here. This feels like a glitched area. I don't think I went here when I was here before, but it's not that I'm like mad about the artistic choice. It actually does have an appreciable impact on my ability to succeed in this game. Achievement complete. You are a teenager. I don't know what that means. Oftentimes, also, the achievements kind of feel like they're beating me down. Like, some of them's like, walk 1 kilometer, and I'm like, shit, I've walked a whole kilometer? I haven't even, like, done anything yet. It'll be like, you know, examine 100 objects, and I'm like, well, I guess that's good, but I'm still trying to solve this puzzle. So I think the game does suffer a little bit from being, maybe too obtuse for its own good. Oh, sorry, I need to get keys. This is right. So follow the path until you find the store shed and search for some keys. Got it. Yeah, like, I oftentimes find myself just wondering what the fuck I'm supposed to do, and this is a weird case. You'll see it shortly, but there is a point in this game, or in the prologue at least, where you can open up something that gives you explicit instructions on how to solve the puzzle, and there has never been a puzzle-ish game that I've played in my entire life where I've looked at explicit instructions and all of a sudden been like, I actually understand this puzzle less. But anyway, we're going to pick up the keys there, and then we'll be able to walk backwards. Let me just read this note to make sure. Okay, so this is just teaching us how to use our inventory. It's also kind of a weird structure for the game. The prologue seems to be very, very long, and obviously by this point you are probably aware, if you're watching this video, that my impressions of this game are not the most positive, but I was not necessarily hyped to play the game, but when I jumped in, I was like, you know, it's kind of a cool atmosphere and neat setting. You don't see it all that often. But by the time I finished the prologue, pardon me, I was like, I don't want to play any more of this game. I understand that they're probably going to introduce some story stuff later that is maybe going to make this more interesting and worthwhile, but as of right now, I am not necessarily interested in that, because it just moves so goddamn slowly, and the puzzles are there. You know what? To offer like a positive light to the puzzles, what they're like is like a game like Myst or Riven or something like that. So you're gonna be looking for a lot of atmospheric clues, and in a certain way, you know, what I kind of feel about this game so far is like, imagine Gone Home, but take Gone Home and make it like, you know, in order to open like the father's filing cabinet, you've got to solve like the fucking Fibonacci sequence. That's not actually something that's hard to solve, I think. I don't know much about math. It's been a while. But it makes puzzles, if the narrative is the focus, then the puzzles take away from it, because the puzzles take you so far out of the immersion of the game just because they are so obtuse and difficult. That's probably the most elegant way I can explain that. So we have kind of like an active time reload here to get our generator back to life. This will turn on the lights, and now we can sort of see, and I actually kind of feel like I need to point out that I don't know if maybe these lights didn't turn on the last time that I played the game, because now it is much, much easier to see. I was alt-tabbing a lot, I'll admit, but I think this is actually much improved. Everything was still very dark last time when I played. But anyway, so we have another puzzle here, and I'm just going to solve it straight away. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to solve it straight away. I'll explain why, because I want to build a moment for this, because it's going to be more, I think, indicative of the game. So our overall goal, and I'll spoil this for you, is that we want to find, you might see if I go through my inventory, I have colorful wooden spinner 3. We want to get 4 of those. So this doesn't mean that we have 3 in our inventory right now, which is a little bit confusing. It means that this is actually the 3rd one. So we need to find 1, 2, and 4 at this point. But first things first, we're going to go back, and at this point you should get a feel for the puzzle, because there will be an opportunity for me to get some more ingredients here that will help us solve our puzzle, but also to read the instructions for how to solve this puzzle. And keep in mind, you know, it might seem like we've walked for a long time. There's the beach that we started at right there. So this is the shack, so we don't want to go in here. We might, but we don't want to right now. And this is shack 2, and if we open this up, we can turn on the lights. Okay, so we'll look in here, and now it becomes a game of searching through drawers, some of which are not openable, some of which are, and then picking up objects as they are allowed to be picked up. So it seems very arbitrary which door. Oh, there's spinner. I definitely should not miss that. Achievement unlocked. Found the 4 colored wooden spinners. That is strange, because I actually solved this puzzle last night. We'll put this here. And, you know, we can mess around with the TV. There's nothing really on. Believe me, I checked. I watched it for like 10 minutes thinking that it might have some kind of clue for how to solve the puzzle that we're approaching right now. Nothing in here, but there are drawers on the bottom. And we're looking for more spinners, but we're also looking for anything that we might be able to use in the future. So what do I have? I have spinner 2 and spinner 3. I need to get 1 and 4, and I kind of forget where they are, but we don't actually need to solve the puzzle for you to experience much of the, what I would consider kind of absurdity of it. Okay, so if we open this up, now you'll be able to read the instructions on the puzzle. And this is where I looked at this game and was kind of like, oh my god, like, do you seriously expect me to do that? Like, I don't have the mental capacity to do that. So, eventually we're going to have to lower a bridge. Here's how we do it. You need to enter the correct time using the sundial. So remember, we're going to put this sundial caster on the sundial, and then we're going to, like, turn that, and that's going to set the time. Turning the sundial to the correct time is going to allow us to move a statue. By moving that statue, we can then go to step 2 here. Examine the buoy from a commanding location and make a note of the light pattern. So, it's kind of ambiguous wording, but the buoy that we see is going to flash at us, and it's going to be like a series of long and short notes. So then step 3, convert that code that you get, the sequence of like long and short light flashes, into colors using the first letter and Morse code. And then correctly set the wooden spinners that have 3 colors on them. So there's like, they have blue, green, and red. The buoy is going to flash a sequence of 4 basically Morse code letters at you, and then you're going to convert those to colors like so. And in case you're wondering, I don't know Morse code, well, the game was nice enough to provide you with a dictionary here. But seriously, I'm not a game designer, and I recognize that the work of developers and game designers is very hard. But if in order to solve your first puzzle, I actually need to find like these explicitly written instructions, and then even after that, I had to just kind of fart around for like 45 minutes and figure it out for myself, because there's so many intermediary steps. Like, okay, I can enter the correct time using the sundial. How do I find the time? Okay, then I found the thing that allows me to actually look at the buoy, and then I've got to write down the Morse code, and shit, I don't really know Morse code, so then I make a couple mistakes, and it takes me a half hour to get the right code, and then also, you know, it's a hidden object game. I've got to find the wooden spinners, and that's frustrating because everything's in dim black and white much of the time. So that is what I've found most frustrating about the game so far, is that it's so obtuse, and it seems like it kind of gets off on being really clever. And if the whole point of the story, or the whole point of this game is atmosphere and narrative, then it really takes away from that experience, because I'm so much taken out of the experience of a game like this when I have to go to, like, Alt-Tab, go to Google and read how to read Morse code, right? Like watching an eHow video or something like that. Now, you might be forgiven for not realizing it, but this is a very significant piece of the puzzle. Especially, this is what gets me. You have to enter the correct time, right? I clicked on this like earlier, and I was like, okay, broken clock. Well, obviously that's not the right time, so I don't know. Do I have to like wait for the sun to come up, and then, you know, I'll go to the sundial and see what time it is? Turns out, no, 10:10 actually is the correct time. So we'll go enter that, and in the meantime, I will go look for the rest of these colored spinners. It's a game that seems a little bit confusing to me. Not just confusing in the sense of the puzzles, but I'm confused for what it's aiming for, if that makes sense. Because, you know, my initial thinking is that this is meant to be kind of like a horror game like Amnesia, but instead, it ends up being much, much more of a game like, again, Myst or Riven, where puzzle solving is the most important part. And that's not necessarily an inherently bad thing, but it does, I don't know. There's other apparently intermittent's the word today. There's other factors that have made it not the most pleasant experience for me. Mostly that it's really, oh, there's a spinner 3, I think. Mostly that it's really inefficient to do anything because you move so slowly and you can't examine things while you walk. But in addition to that, the fact that it's just like kind of laborious, in all honesty. All right, so we're gonna open up this gate. Gate opening simulator continues, and we may or may not be able to solve the puzzle here, but I do believe that the spinner is close by. And that's the bridge, by the way, the fabled bridge. Most of the time, or at least when I played it, I actually got to this area before I had any idea of how to solve this puzzle, and then I kind of figured out all of the middling steps in the puzzle by actually backtracking consistently. So I'm not actually going to, the sculpture won't budge. Oh, because I haven't set the sundial yet. Okay, let's look for the 4th wooden spinner. I think it's around here. And like, this is engaging, right? Like, I'm really enjoying looking at the ground as I walk through this game. Oh, there's the 4th wooden spinner right there. Okay, so at the very least, you can only... Oh my god, okay, I did not know that. Luckily, that's not actually a major problem right now. I'm talking over the voice work, by the way. I hope you don't really mind that too much.
Do I believe in God?
We're gonna put the wooden spinner 2 here. Basically, it seems like it deals so far with like a man's insanity as he is isolated on this island. But anyway, we've got our 3 wooden spinners in there. And we will come back here and pick up our 4th one, which was here, and then we'll pop it into the slot where it is destined to go. And apparently I'm getting so much gamer score here from unlocking the 4 colored spinners over and over. And we'll put this one in here. Good. Okay. So now what we have to do, again, this is the fastest I have been able to solve the puzzle. I know how to do every single step, and it's still going to take me nearly a half hour. So, you know, keep in mind that if you are playing this through for yourself, unless you are incredibly intuitive when it comes to puzzles, you are probably going to find this taking you a long-ass time. Like, it seriously did. There's no walkthrough for this, at least as far as I know right now, because it just came out, and sometimes adventure games send walkthroughs when they send out, like, a press build. I don't think there's one for this, but I was like, I know, I'm gonna solve this. And you know, when I solved it, to the game's credit, I was exceptionally proud of myself, because you gotta connect all the little dots, the broken clock, and then you got the sundial here, and you're like, oh, what do I do with this? Okay, so you start clicking on it. And then we've got to set this to 1010, and then you got to turn this lever, and it's like, these are structures and mechanisms that I'm not familiar with in real life, so I don't really know how to use them at all, but I guess this is kind of like a stopwatch sundial, so you know, line it up to 10, and then you go another 10 clicks to take it to 10 minutes, and again, I have no idea how this works. I have no idea how sundials work in general. I don't know Morse code, so luckily I've still got the pattern written down, I think. Yes, it appears so. There you go, 1010. You hear a distant clicking sound. Amazing. So now I will go and I'll be able to look through that statue, and you'll be able to see the Morse code. And it's at this point, well, you know, well before this point when I was playing it last night, but now I'm like, you can't expect... Really, like, what percent of your player base is actually going to go through the trouble of solving this first puzzle? It's okay if you, like, give them some meat to strive for, right? Like, if you give them, like, a foreshadowing that something amazing is going to happen, and then they're like, oh, I'm motivated to solve this puzzle now, even though it's exceptionally difficult and obtuse, you know, there's some kind of nugget of information that I want to get that's after. But right now, I'm like, I don't care about that, you know, child that was there earlier, like, demon child. I need something more than that in order to solve this. My motivation for solving this puzzle was, I need to do a video on this, and if I don't solve this puzzle, I won't feel qualified. By the way, there we go. So we've looked in here, and I'm going to write it down. Oh, Jesus. So it starts with a red blast, I believe. So we're going to go... This is another sequence here. I believe that might be the third or fourth letter. So prepare to learn some Morse code here. So I believe the red buoy indicates that it starts... So it's like a long, short. I don't know if this is right. Short, long, short. And then long, short. Okay. And then I think it's short, long, short. Yeah, it is. Okay. So I have... this written down here, and I also have the dictionary, like the Morse code dictionary. I wrote it down in a notebook that I have beside me. It's kind of almost like I'm playing Fez, to be honest with you, but not in a good way where I feel like the world is slowly coming together for me, in a way where I'm like, I brute forced this and finally it worked. So the first one was oh no, sorry, the first one was long, short. On the Morse code alphabet, that corresponds to blue. So we rotate this to blue. And then the next one we had was short, long, short. That is an R, so red. The next one was long, short. That is a green. And the next one was red. You hear the sound of air rumbling below. So we solved the puzzle. And then by turning this, and this is like a very representative and kind of elegant ending point for this video. I have a pressure wheel valve. We'll put this on here, and this will start to turn. And I have criticized Montague's mount for being a little bit slow, but this is ridiculous. And I get that maybe this is supposed to be, you know, an old mechanism. Maybe it's supposed to be coming back to life. Maybe it's supposed to be a little bit ominous. But for right now, I just feel really bored and frustrated from playing this game, in all honesty. And it's different. Again, I like contrasting this with a game like A Machine for Pigs. Even though a lot of people didn't really like A Machine for Pigs because it kind of got the Chinese room treatment and became a little bit more narrative-focused than gameplay-focused, everything that happens in that game, even just kind of standing around, has a sense of dread associated with it because you've been exposed to, if not outright danger, you've at least been exposed to the idea that something here is not right. What I feel like right now is, it almost gives me the same vibe as kind of like a game like Miasmata or something like that. Although even Miasmata has a sense of danger associated with it. Like right now, I've crash landed on this island. Occasionally I squint, and I still can't walk over this, by the way. I think it's the loading screen that's disguised here. There we go. I think maybe he's like wounded and that's why he's constantly squinting, but otherwise I don't feel a connection to my character. I don't feel a connection to the story because there is no story so far. I had a vision of a small child and then I spent 90 minutes trying to solve this Morse code sundial nightmare back here. So, as of right now, you know, it's worth noting that I expect that this game kind of blossoms, at least from a narrative and kind of atmospheric standpoint after this. But I haven't really had a very fun time with Montague's Mount at all, even though it is October, and I know a lot of people are kind of in the market for scary games, because October puts people in that kind of mood. Montague's Mount is not necessarily the thing I can really recommend, unless you are a huge fan of the type of puzzle that you just saw me solve, because at least as far as I've seen so far, that is basically the way that you play the entire game. That's the meat of the game. But as always, there will be a link in the video description to pick this up on GOG if you're interested. Suffice it to say, I'm not the biggest fan of Montague's Mount, but if you disagree with me, then I encourage you to go check it out. As always, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to click the like button. It helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you want to see more daily first impressions. And of course, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.